Let's take a look at Johanna, the Crusader, who is one of my new favorite heroes in Heroes of the Storm. She is absolutely amazing. We're going to go ahead and isolate this. We'll make it its own video, put it up on the site. We'll have a quick little guide to Johanna. So Johanna, the Crusader. Most people right now will tell you that Johanna is invulnerable and cannot be killed. First thing I'm going to tell you is Johanna is not invincible. She can be killed, but it is very difficult to do. So I'm going to go ahead and show you a build that I kind of like. Now, if you've seen my Tassadar video, you know that occasionally I encounter heroes where it is not about one set build that I like, or I give maybe more options than just one build. And Johanna's definitely going to be one of those. I never go with the same build by default anytime, and the first talent is one of the primary examples of those. There's a couple talents on here that I really like, but let's go ahead and start with her basic abilities. So, Q is Punish, 40 mana, 8-second cooldown, deal 58 damage, and slow enemies by 60%, decaying over 2 seconds. That looks like this. You can see, swings, hits them, does not do a lot of damage. If you look at Arthas' health, it is not exactly flying down. Same thing with the minions. I hit them, not very impressive. That's one thing you're going to learn very quickly about Johanna, is that she might be tough, but she does not deal a whole lot of damage. W is actually one of my favorite abilities of hers. W is Condemn, which costs 50 mana. It's an area of effect. After 1 second, you pull nearby enemies toward you, stunning them for 0.25 seconds and dealing 25 damage. Now, the stun is one of the most important parts of this ability because it can actually be used to interrupt ultimates. It is incredibly useful. So let's take a look at that. You want to kind of just get it on the cone of where the character is standing. You can see it grabbed Arthas, it pulled him in. It does a very short delay stun, but it's really good for just yanking him in and pulling him in. I totally missed, too. I'm going to just own up to it in my own video. I'd like to pretend like it didn't happen, but it totally happened. Missed again. So, it is a tricky ability. It's really good for chasing down enemies when you're running after them and they're just outside of your range. You can usually pop this and kind of pull them right back in. If you hit with the slow right after, it's going to slow them down even more. And it's a really, really useful ability. It can be chained into combos with other heroes very, very easily. And also, nothing more annoying for a hero trying to get away than getting yanked right back into the fight. Shield Glare is the E ability. It costs 45 mana, deals 58 damage to enemies, and causes them to miss their next 2 basic attacks within 4 seconds. So, as you can see, it's a nice big cone. It does a little bit of damage, but the big thing is it also removes any damage that they're going to do. So, from their next 2 basic attacks. So it's not going to interrupt, you know, if someone's going to shoot a fireball at you, as a special move, well, it's not going to help you there, but it will help you if they're just going to hit you with their sword or something like that. And you can see it's already missing these minions. It's a nice way to make enemies back off, wait for the blind to go away, and then come back, or they just flat out miss. So let's take a look at her trait. Johanna's trait is Iron Skin. It costs 25 mana, so keep in mind, it does cost mana. Has a 20-second cooldown. Become unstoppable and gain a shield that absorbs 308 damage for 4 seconds. So what this does is if there are any sorts of roots or movement impairing effects, you know, if you get into trouble and you need to get out of there, I'm trying to get myself in trouble here. I guess this is about all I can hope for. You can pop D, you get unstoppable. You're not going to get slowed down by anything. You're going to be able to just run right out, get out of trouble. Likewise, if somebody's going to start hitting you with a very powerful move, you can go ahead and hit D, and that's going to negate a lot of the damage that you would otherwise take. So it's a very useful talent that gets just even more useful. Obviously, it's got a very quick cooldown. This is one of the primary reasons why people think Johanna is invulnerable. And it also lets you do things like walk right up to towers and, you know, you can get in there and actually soak up a couple bullets before you need to get out, before there's any problems. So Johanna is super useful in that regard. We'll go ahead and take a look at ultimates as we unlock them, but let's go ahead and take a look at her rank 1 talents. Now there's a couple that I like in this particular one. First of all, like I said, Johanna's damage is very low, so you can actually take a lot of talents that are going to up her damage. And one of the primary talents that you can use for that is this Knight's Take Pawn, which Condemn deals 140 additional damage to minions and mercenaries and stuns them for 4 seconds. It's a nice way to add a little utility to a move you're going to use a lot anyway. Another one I really like is Regeneration Master. You know, being a warrior, she's going to be in the front line getting health orbs frequently. Basically, this increases her health regeneration. It kind of starts weak, but later in the game you're going to notice that your health is just coming back by default very, very fast. And I really, really like that talent. At first I didn't think it was that great, but I noticed anytime I took it, I just felt like I was so much more useful as Johanna. Another really good one is Reinforce. Now, this one you're going to want to check your enemy composition. If you're going up against a bunch of spellcasters, if you're going up against Jaina and Kael'thas and very spell-heavy enemies, Reinforce isn't going to do much for you. It will still help, but it's not going to be as helpful. But if you're going up against Vala or Illidan or somebody that's going to be in there hitting you a lot, Reinforce is almost mandatory. Basically, you get 2 stacks, next basic melee attacks against you gets lowered by 50%. It's just going to make you a better tank, which is what this is kind of about. So, for this case, I'm going to go ahead and take, let's take Regen Master. The other one restores mana. I wouldn't worry about it. It's not particularly important. It's not particularly great. So, we'll go ahead and go with that.
That feels much better.
For her rank 4 talents, we've got Amplified Healing. This is a really good talent if you know you're going to have a healer hanging out with you, and you know you're going to be getting a lot of healing effects stacked up on you. This one's very good to have. If you know you're going to be on your own a lot, it's not going to be super useful. She doesn't have a lot of self-healing, so you're going to kind of waste the talent if you pick that. Roar is kind of your damage increase ability. It basically makes your punishment do more damage. So again, it's kind of a nice way to enhance what is one of her weaknesses as a character, which is how much damage she can do. Eternal Retaliation. Condemn's cooldown is lowered by 0.75 seconds for each enemy affected, maximum of 10 targets. So, in other words, if I use Condemn, I get a whole lot of targets. The cooldown on Condemn is going to be much faster. Having that faster cooldown is great for that ability. This was one that I typically took that talent very early on. I don't take it as much anymore because I find I'm in a lot of situations where I'm chasing down 1 or 2 targets, and the lowering of the cooldown when you're just getting a few is not as big of a deal. And Laws of Hope. Regenerate 5 health per second, and you can also activate to heal 20% of your max health over 4 seconds. I actually really like this one. A self-heal is very handy to have. As you can see, I'm taking it. And also, when you stack it with the regen we're getting from picking up these health globes and stuff like that, it's a lot of regen that you're going to end up having on her. And it's very, very useful for that reason. Alright, for her rank 7 talents, Battle Momentum, basic attacks reduce ability cooldowns by 0.5 seconds. So, that one I haven't played a lot with. It seems like it could be a cool talent, but notice how slow Johanna attacks. She attacks kind of on par with what Arthas is doing. Like, you don't get a lot of basic attacks in as Johanna, really. She's kind of a slower character. It's not going to really give you what seems like a great big boost, in my opinion. So it doesn't seem particularly great. I don't usually take it. The Crusade marches on. Basic and heroic abilities lower the cooldown of Iron Skin by 1.5 seconds. If you want to spam your Iron Skin, if you want to be able to get in there and know you're going to do Iron Skin a lot, that's not a bad way to go, but it's also not my typical choice. I don't feel like I'm hurting for having Iron Skin up too often. Conviction is another good one. When you use Condemn, your movement speed is increased by 25% for 1 second. Having a way to catch back up to characters and do more damage is always a nice thing. Always a good thing to have access to. But the one I take more often than not is Sins Exposed. Basically what that means is Shield Glare marks enemies for 4 seconds. The next time an ally damages them, they take 72 extra damage and the mark is removed. So it basically means you can apply an AoE debuff. Anytime these guys take damage, they're going to take even more damage. It's a very nice talent to have. It's what I like to do. Johanna's really good in team fights, so being able to throw that on there is very nice, and that's what I would take.
Choose a talent.
Alright, so let's talk Johanna heroic abilities. A lot of people are going to want to take Falling Sword because it is flashy and it looks cool and it's got mobility, and it's definitely the one that when you look at the character and you see that ability, you think, man, that looks really cool, that looks great. But it's not, in my opinion, the right choice. Maybe for some maps, but generally speaking, I think Johanna plays better with Blessed Shield. And what makes Blessed Shield so great? Deals 160 damage and stuns the first enemy hit for 2 seconds. It then bounces to 2 nearby enemies, dealing 80 damage and stunning them for 1 second. Taking this heroic is pretty much a guarantee to have great engages when you have team fights. If you see Vala doing her ultimate, hit R, hit her with the shield, you're going to interrupt the ultimate, and you're going to have made it to where she has completely wasted it. This actually works on a lot of heroes' ultimate abilities. It's a really, really good way to do some heavy damage and win some team fights. It is a skill shot, which means you can miss. There's not a guarantee you'll hit Arthas, but you can see, throw it out there, he's stunned in place. Really good, easy way to get in there and do some additional damage to him. It's a fantastic heroic. It's not flashy, but it really gets the job done, and it's really, really good. So I can't recommend it enough.
Of course, choose a talent.
Alright, so again, we've got another set of talents here that are very, very optional. You know, and depending on the circumstances, kind of depends on if you're going to want to use it or not. But we've got Burning Rage, deal 36 damage per second to nearby enemies. Burning Rage is great. I actually like it. A lot of heroes get the option to take it. Johanna's one that makes sense because she kind of just absorbs a lot of damage, so anytime you're just standing by the enemy, they're going to be taking damage from just being near you. So it's a really nice kind of talent to have. Hold Your Ground increases Iron Skin shield by 20%. If the shield's destroyed, the damage cooldown is reduced by 4 seconds. You know, making Iron Skin stronger and reducing the cooldown if people get through it is definitely handy. But I tend to use Iron Skin in very particular circumstances, so it's not as good for me to buff with the way that I play Johanna. Subdue increases Punish's slow to 80% decaying over 3 seconds, so it's a better slow, makes it easier to catch enemies when they're trying to get away. And Spell Shield It's kind of like the block talent at 1, except now it is for ability damage instead of basic attacks. So if you're going very heavily on the defensive, or if you're going up against a bunch of casters, it might be a good choice to take at that point. I'm going to take Burning Rage because I love Burning Rage so much. I mean, she has an ability that pulls enemies to her, which just makes Burning Rage that much more effective. You can see they're getting hurt just by being near me, which is kind of the point of being in there as a warrior, so it's a great ability.
Choose a talent.
Alright, level 16, almost done. Holy Renewal. Every enemy hero affected by shield glare heals you for 220. So this is kind of a self-heal for Johanna, which, you know, we took a self-heal earlier. It is kind of nice to have a self-heal, but I still don't think it's that useful. Late in the game, you are so tanky that worrying about healing yourself is kind of a waste of time. So I would say that's very circumstantial. Fanaticism. While Iron Skin is active, gain 8% movement speed each time you take damage, stacks up to 40%. This basically turns your Iron Skin into an escape ability, which you're going to frequently use it for anyway, but I don't think it's necessary. Again, by this late in the game, Johanna's so tanky that you kind of know if you're going to live or die, and having another escape isn't super useful. Imposing Presence. Enemies that attack you have their attack speed slowed. You know, definitely tanking by having the enemy do less damage is good. It's not my choice for this particular tier, but it's not a bad talent. And Blessed Hammer. Condemn also creates a hammer that spirals around you, dealing 80 damage as it hits, as to enemies it hits. So basically another ability to kind of up Johanna's damage, which again, I really like. It's kind of the one area she's really weak in is damage. So if you take abilities that up her damage, yeah, she's not as tanky, but she's still super tanky, and now you're doing extra damage. So you can see now I'm pulling in Arthas, and with just a couple moves, I'm already doing significantly more damage to him at this point than I was before. Alright, finally, level 20. You're going to find that almost everybody who plays Johanna picks the same ability at level 20. It is a very good ability, and it's definitely one of her iconic abilities, and that is Indestructible. Upon taking fatal damage, gain a shield equal to your maximum health for 5 seconds. This ability has a 120-second cooldown. So in other words, as soon as you die, you get a big old shield, and you have the ability to get out of there or start healing up so that you can keep on fighting even after taking fatal damage. Now, the one reason you wouldn't take this is because it does hinge on the fact that you're going to die, which late in the game, the goal is not to die. So in some ways it lets you play Johanna a little bit more reckless than maybe you would otherwise, but you know, nobody should be playing this game to die. So that's kind of the case against it. Storm Shield is always kind of nice, because, you know, throwing up a shield on your allies and all of that, it can help, especially if you're hitting the core and you want to give everybody a shield to help them keep fighting, but also Indestructible kind of helps for that, depending on how much damage you need to do to the core. The alternative is you can bump up your heroic abilities if you went with Falling Sword. Now, while you're in the air, you're going to rain damage down on them, and Radiating Faith. Basically, you can throw the shield further, it bounces further, and it hits additional enemies, so now you can actually stun the entire team instead of just 3 members of the team. So it does make it better, but I really like Indestructible, so I'm going to say that should be your choice for the final talent. So that's kind of the build that I run with Johanna. Let's go ahead and take a look. I had to refresh the forts because we actually won while I was talking, but that's okay. We'll get in there. We'll show what Johanna can do. So you can see how much damage she is able to deal when you kind of spec her more damage focused. Clearly she's staying in here taking shots from both towers, taking shots from minion waves, taking shots from Arthas. You know, super tanky, just not even really worried about anybody or anything. You can always pop the indestructible if you're trying to get out somewhere. Get out of here, Arthas. And then I'll kick Frostmourne for good measure. She's just so dang tough. I mean, Arthas has just given up. He's just said, okay, clearly I'm not going to damage her. She's just going to sit there and attack the building. I'll go fight him. You know, got minions on me now. Not even that's worrying me. Pop unstoppable. No big deal. She can just get in there and hit stuff. You know, she's just a beast. And while her damage isn't super high, there are ways around it, and it just makes her a powerhouse. She's an amazing hero. If it sounds like I'm excited, I am. I really like Johanna. I've played her up to level 10, and she's one that I will still continuously go back to because she is just fantastic. So I hope that helps. I hope that gives you some idea on how to play and how to spec her out. We're going to end this like we always do, with a little slash dance. Her dance is okay. She kind of freaks out at the end, but what are you gonna do? Sometimes that's what you gotta do.